Oh man, this movie's great. Oh, hey guys. Courier6 here with the Kaladesh Express, your number one source for Universes Beyond. And I am currently rewatching GhostBusters. And man, I had not watched these movies in a long time. Let me tell you, I understand why these movies are cult classics. They are hilarious, and they deserve the devoted fan base they've got. I mean, I was just at Dragon Con not too long ago, and people were walking around in complete Ghostbuster everything. I mean, the costumes, they had their cars done like the Ecto-1. I mean, they even had a giant Stay Puft Marshmallow on top of one of the vehicles. It was insane. And Ghostbusters has so much media and merchandise to go along with it. I mean, there's the cartoon and video games, obviously, but then you have things like the toys. And then there's even food stuff like Ecto Cooler, which, okay, I couldn't find Ecto Cooler for this bit. Apparently it's a seasonal thing and it's also high C and I refuse to drink that. I do have self-respect. But I did find this glowing red liquid inside my sewer and I don't know. Smells okay. I might drink that later by the end of the video. We'll see. I don't know. Anyway, it just feels weird that we never got a Ghostbusters Magic the Gathering crossover. Seems like a no-brainer to me, especially with Duskmourn coming out and, you know. Slimer, what are you doing here? Ugh, you slimed me. Oh man, I feel much better now. Hey guys, it's Courier6 here with the Kaladesh Express, your number one source for Universes Beyond, and today we're going to be talking about Slimer from the Ghostbusters franchise. If you didn't know, Slimer's getting a secret lair soon, and I normally do these videos after the secret lair has come out if I'm going to do one based on a secret lair character. However, I don't know, Slimer's pretty simple as far as the character goes, so I thought it might be a fun one to jump back into Legends Explains with. But yeah, we're going to be talking about his origin and making a deck for him. And to prepare for this particular project and all upcoming Ghostbusters projects I may or may not do, I went ahead and rewatched almost all of Ghostbusters. I watched Ghostbusters 1 and 2. I also watched Afterlife. And I'm currently working my way through the Ghostbusters cartoon at the moment. Not through with it yet, but I'm just kind of enjoying it, trying to enjoy the rides. A lot of fun, actually. Check it out if you haven't seen it. And I also saw the Ghostbusters reboot, and let me give you my quick feelings on that.
Step aside. If he does that again, you can shoot him.
Timestamp on screen now if you want to skip the lore. And yeah, let's just get into it. Slimer, the green ghost from Ghostbusters who started as a chaotic, gluttonous blob in the 1984 film, but somehow became a cultural icon. In the first Ghostbusters, Slimer barely had a role, just a hungry ghost causing chaos in a hotel. But his infamous sliming of Vinkman
He slimed me.
resonated with audiences, and from that moment, Slimer, as a character, as an icon, was born. But it's in The Real Ghostbusters, an animated series that came out between the first two films, where things get weird. Instead of the troublesome ghost, Slimer is now the team's lovable sidekick. His antics, pure comedy. He's always eating, sliming someone, or just messing things up, but fans loved him for it. Despite his clumsiness, Slimer was more than just comic relief. He was part of the team, and it's Slimer's contradictions that make him work. He's gross but lovable, clumsy but loyal. This goofy green ghost came to symbolize the heart and humor of the Ghostbusters. Oh my gosh, symmetrical deck stack. And yeah, that is the lore of Slimer from the Ghostbusters. Like I said, it's not very long. There's not a lot to say on him. He is kind of like a mascot character, and I think that's okay. But I really think that the secret lair is cool, and I wanted to talk about this a little bit. It seemed like a good opportunity to do a Legends Explain. Now let's get into the deck tech part of Legends Explain, where I make a deck based on the legend. And yeah, let's just jump into that. Alright, let's get started with our commander, the Mimeoplasm, aka Slimer Voracious Apparition. The Mimeoplasm is a legendary creature ooze, 0/0, for 2, a black, a green, and a blue, and it has, as the Mimeoplasm enters the battlefield, you may exile 2 creature cards from graveyards. If you do, it enters the battlefield as a copy of one of those cards with a number of additional +1/+1 counters on it equal to the power of the other card. So the Mimeoplasm likes to fill the graveyard quickly and eat things out of it. And not just your graveyard, it can eat out of your opponent's graveyards too, which we will take advantage of. The Mimeoplasm, aka Slimer, likes to eat everything, so we want to make sure we are true to that. So let's get started with our cards that take direct advantage of the graveyard. That's going to be reanimating the graveyard, counting the graveyard, recurring lands from the graveyard, things like that. Let's start with Reanimate. Reanimate is going to put a creature from the graveyard onto the battlefield immediately. We're going to be milling a lot of powerful creatures, and this card is going to be indispensable in our arsenal. Then we have Animate Dead, which basically does the same thing. Makes it a little weaker, but it's fine. Old Stick Fingers is here as a quick way to get a bunch of things into our graveyard, and also can just be a big beat stick. Stitched Together is another card that is basically just another recursion piece. A really good one though. Eternal Witness, because any green deck that exists should probably be playing Eternal Witness. You need to have really good reasons to not play a recursion piece on a body. It's a really good card. Necromancy is another animation piece. We need quite a few of those. Raminap Excavator is going to be pretty good. We'll be able to reuse lands from our graveyards. Again, we'll be milling a lot of cards and we'll want to be able to replay some of those lands, so it's a really good card in this deck. Victimize is a recursion piece. Necrotic Ooze is very interesting. It allows us to reuse activated abilities, not just from our graveyards, but our opponent's graveyard. So if an opponent has something set up in their graveyard that they can reuse as like an infinite combo or just some value, we'll be able to use it for ourselves, especially since we'll be milling our opponents a lot. Wonder, it's a great card. We want to mill this. We don't want to eat it with the Mimeoplasm. We just want to keep it in the graveyard. It gives our creatures flying that don't have flying. Very useful card. Body Double is going to do a little bit of a bad imitation of the Mimeoplasm. It's just going to be a copy of one of the things in our graveyard, but having extra copies of our commander effect is never a bad thing, especially when we're basically just a clone deck. Incarnation Techniques, a relatively new card from Commander 2021. I kind of forgot about it, but it's really good. So it has Demonstrate on it, so we'll be able to let our opponents do what we do, and then we get double our effect. It's kind of sick. Obviously, we're going to have more juicy targets in our graveyard, so this card's going to work a lot better for us than our opponents. In theory. Living Death's an insane card for a mill deck. We're going to be milling like most of our deck, and we're going to get most of it onto the battlefield. I maybe should have threw this in the win con category because it does just win the game a lot of the time. Lord of Extinction is just a big body. If we have Wonder in the graveyard, we might be able to make our commander massive and then just one-shot a lot of our opponents. Also, it's kind of a cool card. Avatar Woe is kind of a pet card for me. I really like it. It's not the best removal, but it's a relatively big creature with some relevant abilities, and it can cost like 2 to play occasionally. And that's the end of our direct graveyard strategy. Now we're getting into our interaction / removal pieces, and we'll start with Assassin's Trophy. It is just one of the best removal spells in Magic, but especially in any Golgari colors. It removes everything. Cyclonic Rift, I mean, if you're in blue, there's really no reason to not play Cyclonic Rift. It's one of the best removal spells in the game. Again, it's like Assassin's Trophy. If you're in this colors, you should probably be playing this card. Trick Bind is really cool. It's a stifle, and I love stifle effects. I'm glad to see this one get a reprint in the Secret Lair. Beast Within, and again, staple removal piece in green. You should probably be playing it if you're in green. And Pernicious Deed, another reprint from the Secret Lair. This card is nuts. It lets you selectively board wipe, and generally, because we're playing a lot of big things, or at least things 5 or greater that we care about, we'll be able to wipe our opponent's boards without touching our stuff, which is great. That's the end of the interaction / removal section. Now we're gonna look at our looting cards that just take cards out of our hand, put them in the graveyard. It gives us a lot more selection as to what goes in our graveyard, which is important. And we'll start with Fauna Shaman. It lets us discard a creature and then find any other creature in our deck, put it in our hand. It's great for setting up or finding more ramp pieces or utility creatures, but then it also lets us selectively put like an Ulamog on the graveyard. You know what I mean? Likeness Looter is a looter, but it also has flying and it can clone things in the graveyard, which is very important. Frantic Search lets us loot out of our hand for free effectively as long as we have the 3 lands to play this card. Sultai Charm, I like charms. I don't normally run them, but I really do like Sultai Charm in this deck because it does have that looting effect, but it also has some removal modes on it. Windfall, another card I'm glad to see getting a reprint. It's getting up to like $2 again, which is kind of wild to me. But yeah, Windfall, great card. It wheels everybody, it can disrupt plans. It also lets us put a bunch of stuff in our graveyard, which is what we want to be doing. Underrealm Lich lets us mill without technically milling. It also gives us some card selection. It also is a indestructible blocker, which is pretty great. All right, then we have our mill / send straight to the graveyard from the deck kind of cards, starting with Entomb. Entomb lets us put any creature from our deck into our graveyard for 1 mana. It's amazing to play on turn 1, but it does give away your strategy. It can put a target on your back sometimes, so you do want to be selective when you actually use this card. Citrus Supplier is a way better turn 1 play in my opinion. It lets us mill 3 random cards, but it doesn't make us as immediately scary to our opponents, which is probably important. Aftermath Analyst, a new card from Murders at Karlov Manor, which already needs a reprint. It's already creeping up to $2.50 for non-foil, $5 for foil, which is crazy for an uncommon from us, currently still in standard set. But yeah, this card's great. It mills cards, and then it lets us put all our lands back to the graveyard onto the battlefield. It's like a Splendid Reclamation on a body. Absolutely phenomenal. Grizzly Salvage, one of my favorite cards in Magic. Love playing this in my Pioneer Greasefang deck. This card's fantastic. Lets us selectively put some stuff in the graveyard and also fix us, maybe get us some lands, maybe get us like a mana dork if we need it. It's not bad. The Bane of Jimmy Wong.
offer. That means I get one sweet activation of this Hermit Druid, and it's gonna be awesome. I will activate the Hermit Druid and reveal cards off the top of my library until I reveal a basic land. Okay.
Hermit Druid, yes, we want to try to activate Hermit Druid and mill as many cards as we can at once. It is a gamble, but it is a fun gamble, and it costs 2 mana, so we do want to run Hermit Druid. Although this card does need a reprint, I don't know that it ever had another reprint outside of Stronghold, so yeah, this might be one to look at reprinted Wizards if you get my letters. Life from the Loam, it lets us get some lands back, so we're going to be milling a lot of lands, and it also has Dread, so we can put more cards in the graveyard. Unmarked Grave is like Entomb for non-legendary creatures. It's just another copy of Entomb mostly. Lets us set up our graveyard with some big things, and then eat them later with the Mimeoplasm. Urborg Lorgoyf. This card is pretty cool. I love having a Tarmogoyf. I felt wrong to have any Tarmogoyfs in the deck. I know this is probably one of the worst ones, but it can mill like 6 cards for us, which is pretty good, and it gets pretty big. Buried Alive, it's another Entomb, this time for 3. It costs 3 and it gives us 3 creatures. It's really good. Dreamborn Muse is a very scary card. It could quickly mill us out completely, but it can also mill our opponents out, which is another like side strategy we're going for here. Sidisi Brewtower, it's reusable mill, and it's a thing that's going to put some zombies on the board for us, some blockers. Angel of Suffering's a new card, or newer card from New Capenna, and new card from New Capenna. It is exactly what we want to be doing. It doesn't allow us to take damage and then lets us mill for the amount of damage. We can quickly mill ourselves out, which we do have contingencies for, but it lets us fill our graveyard very quickly, which is the primary thing we want to be doing. And we also want to fill our opponent's graveyards quickly, and that's why we have Consuming Apparition. This card is insanely scary. Every time we cast a spell, our opponents are going to have to mill cards until they hit a land. And I've seen this card mill like 30 cards in a row before. This card is mean, but it is like, it's like necessary, right? You probably don't need to run this one. This one is particularly mean, but like I like to run it. I don't know what that says about me. Golgari Grave Troll, it's more dredge. That's really a big reason it's here. It's dredge 6. Let's just put 6 cards from our library into our graveyard, which is kind of nice. And my other favorite mean card, it is Traumatize. Traumatize lets us target a player. It can be ourselves, and a lot of time it is going to be ourselves, but you know, you could also target an opponent, and they just have to put half their library into their graveyard. Then we got some ramp. We got Birds of Paradise, standard stuff. Deathrite Shaman, another standard piece. It's also pretty nice. It's incidental graveyard hate. Delighted Halfling, got to protect that commander. Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, and then Skull Prophet is mill and ramp, which is pretty cool. And then Cultivate. Before we get into the things we'll have Slimer eat, I want to quickly look at the 3 utility artifacts we're running. So we got Lightning Greaves to give the Mimeoplasm haste. It is going to be important sometimes. Mesmeric Orb, it's pretty insane. Also needs another reprint at $23 for a foil. It's kind of wild. It was just reprinted in Brothers War, I think. So yeah, it's kind of crazy. But yeah, it's every time an opponent untaps a permanent, they're going to mill a card, which is going to get out of hand very quickly. And then we have Conduit of Worlds. It's like Crucible of Worlds, except it also occasionally allows us to play something out of our graveyard, which could be very relevant. Also, creeping up there like to $7.30. Jeez. Yeah, that one could use a reprint as well. And we're on to our final section, which I like to call Slimer Food. This is the section where we have a bunch of creatures that are there for the express purpose of having Slimer eat. And we'll start with Skithiryx, the Blight Dragon. This card flies and has Infect. Slimer's going to get counters equal to the other creature that we eat, so it's pretty easy to get this up to 10 counters immediately, or 10 power, and then immediately one-shot an opponent with Infect. This card is crazy. Then we have Muldrotha, the Gravetide. I mean, well, we don't necessarily want to eat this with Slimer, but I didn't have a better section to put it in. But also, it is a card that we could use with Slimer to recast some of our other stuff in which we're going to be milling. It's not bad. Another pet card of mine, it has Island Walk and Swamp Walk, which is the big thing. It also lets us cast some instants and sorceries out of our opponent's graveyards. Then we have Yargle and Watani. I think you know why this one is here. It can give Slimer 18 +1/+1 counters when it enters, in addition to whatever the other thing it is eating is. This card is an automatic include in any Mimeoplasm, Slimer, whatever deck that worries about eating things out of the graveyard. This card's insane. Colossal Sky Turtle. We can channel this and then do some things, but the more important thing is that we can channel it and have 6 power in the graveyard for Slimer to eat along with something else. Nezahul Primal Tide. Making Slimer a copy of this is kind of interesting. So you can eat Nezahul with Slimer and then flicker Slimer Nezahul and eat some other things later if you want to. This card's pretty good, but also it draws a lot of cards. It's like Mr. Cremora, but on a body, and also just 7/7 is not bad stat lines at all. Sepulchral Primordial. I'm sure I said that right. It has Intimidate, it's relatively big, and it also lets us recur things from an opponent's graveyard. Sheoldred the Whispering One is doing the thing, but like probably better. It's forcing our opponents to sack things, which gives us more targets to eat, and then it also recurs things from our graveyard. We're going to be recurring very big things as you've seen so far, so this is one of the all-stars of the deck by a long shot. Tyrannus Rex is one of my new favorite cards. Making Slimer a copy of this is insane. It has all the keywords. It makes your opponents block very badly to protect what little they have. Godzilla or Tyrannithrax is here to be channeled. It has a lot of power, which can, help Slimer become bigger when he eats something else, gets the abilities of 1, and then the power of Tyrannithrax, which is 11 +1/+1 counters. And the final card I have in the deck is Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger. I'm not running this card because it's the best possible Eldrazi. I do think probably the Ulamog the Infinite Gyre is probably better with the Annihilator triggers. However, it's Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger, and also I own this version of the card, and yeah, I mean, come on, it's really funny. This is Ceaseless Hunger. It's Slimer. They both like to eat. Come on, it's pretty funny, right? Well, yeah, so this version does not get its cast trigger, but it does cause your opponents to exile cards from their library, which also isn't great for us. Again, if you want to make this deck the better version, I would just run Ulamog the Infinite Gyre. But if you want the memes, the funny version, get the Ceaseless Hunger because it's Slimer. Yeah, Ma, you got ghosts in your house. I don't know what you want me to do about that. Maybe you should call somebody. I'm not sure who you might call about that, but you could probably Google that one. I don't know. I got to record a video. I'll hit you back later. And yeah, that'll about do it for the Slimer deck tech / lore / Legends Explained video. I'll be covering all of the GhostBuster secret layers and the rest of the secret layers once they're all announced, like I normally do, so stay tuned for that. Make sure to like and subscribe. And otherwise, yeah, I hope you guys have a fantastic day. Yeah, Ma, I know ghosts, but I don't know who to call.